World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real. This event is brought to you by World Pro Racing, the Malta Motorsport Federation, GMR Entertainment, WJ England & Son, Melita, Media Looks, Restream.io, Gaming Malta, VisitMalta.com, and TVM Sport.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
This is so dangerous. You're risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real. 3. 3 is a number. 3 is a great number. 3, some would say, is a magic number. But it's those 3 challenges that we have had up to this point which have set a precedent. From that precedent where we have gone globe-trotting across Europe, we now head to a magical track, one which has been at the forefront of endurance racing for the best part of 50 years. It's a track which some have called the Great Track, which hosts the Great Race and holds a 12-hour event that pretty much sets one of the tone for the entirety of the year. We are at Mount Panorama Bathurst. We are here to see who can beat the mountain here today, and the mountain will look to try and take as many victims along with herself. At this point in time, though, it's an official Maltese showdown here, and this could be the best challenge yet. We are live, of course, on some fantastic platforms and, of course, all our syndications as well. We are live, of course, with ESTV, with Motorsport.tv, and, of course, with TVM Sport, as well as on World Pro Racing's YouTube, Facebook Live, and on Twitch as well. In terms of who we are, though, in terms of talking, my name's Jake Sperry. Nicholas Hillebrand is alongside me today with Justin and Nathan Mifsud on the broadcast cameras. The race director is Adrian Fagayo, and our chief steward is George Muscat. But today is slightly different here today, Nicholas, as I accidentally knocked my pop shield ever so slightly for a second. Today is slightly different because this is going to go on a little bit longer than what we've expected. This is a gauntlet challenge. They've got to go once around the clock to try and get themselves exactly to where they want to. It's 1 hour today on who can tame the mountain.
Well, it's certainly going to be a challenge. The longer the race, of course, the longer you have to survive. And at Bathurst, that's not an easy feat at all, especially in these Group 3 cars, which are, of course, a mix between GT3 and GTE cars. So they're even faster than we're used to. So I think they're going to be scraping under the 2-minute mark at this lap. And with all that elevation change at the end of Sector 1 through the entirety of Sector 2 and, Sector 3 as well, and with these long straights, I think we're looking for a very interesting race today.
Absolutely we are, and this place is no stranger to great racing and great sim racing, and sim racing is all the rage at the moment. You've probably seen at least one sim race over the course of the last I would say 6 months or so since we've been going forward. And of course, if you haven't already and you want to get into racing action and you want to come join World Pro Racing and all of the great events that they put on, you can always like, share and subscribe for more amazing content. You can head over to the website at worldproracing.com to find events, giveaways and so much more that goes on behind the scenes. And if you haven't already, join their Discord as well, which you can find at the website, and you can get yourself involved with some amazing sim racing action. And it's that sim racing action that we find ourselves with today. But let's talk Mount Panorama Bathurst for the moment. We're about 5 minutes away from heading over towards practice, Nicholas, but this track is a street circuit. It doesn't feel like a street circuit, but the walls are caving in close when you drive up the mountain. There's 2 real key overtaking opportunities and 1 downhill section, which really does separate men from boys.
Well, as you say, it is a street circuit. The walls are so immensely close, it's really, really terrifying when you're actually driving it yourself. It doesn't matter if it's in the sim or if it's in real life. Either way, as you said, it separates men from boys. Overall, how the track goes, how the overall track just flows and everything, it feels more like a little road through a dense forest. It winds and, it evades trees, so to speak. And, there's also a lot of trees just all around the track. Yeah, it's narrow. It's on top of the absolute best mountain in, Australia, I would say. And, yeah. I think survival will be the key here, and let's see who can survive best.
And of course, any small mistake is just compounded more and more around this place. There's so much that can go wrong. Not only does it separate the men from the boys, but it also separates the ladies from the girls as well. It's so much great stuff that happens around this track, and it is magical, and it is magical in the sense that you have a couple of really key overtaking opportunities around this lap. And of course, you got that run up the mountain straight going through Hell's Corner turn number 1, heading over towards turn 2, and that turn 2 really does give you the first real shot of diving down the inside and making something happen at a corner which really does drop away from you over at turn number 2. But more importantly than that, there is that very, very iconic stretch of road coming out of the Forest Elbow, down the Conrod Straight to the fastest corner in Australian motorsport. And some would even say at this point, for what we've got going on today, as we're 2 minutes away from going to practice here, Nicholas, the fastest corner in Australian sim racing. And that, of course, is the fabled Chase.
Yeah, 280 kilometers an hour would be the top speed that you're approaching here. And I think, especially after such a long straight, where there's so much slipstream battling to be done, we can look 2-3 wide into there. And at those speeds, the last thing you want is another car, or maybe even 2 beside you, and then into this very hard braking zone, 2nd, maybe 3rd gear if your car has a very short set of gears in the first couple. But either way, it's certainly some G-forces putting into the car there, and it's just so amazing to see it. You come down this big stretch, just completely downhill, and really cameras and even in the simulator, it doesn't do it justice how steep it actually goes downhill from Forest Elbow down to the Chase. And I think it's just going to be very exciting to see everyone just tackle this circuit.
Absolutely. We're driving today on Gran Turismo Sport. It will be a whole hour's worth of action and a bit more here today, because it will be effectively an hour and a half's worth of action that we've got. We've got 15 minutes of practice. That'll be followed by the 15-minute shootout qualifying. That'll be coming up after said practice, and then we'll be going once around the clock to see that finish come the end. In GT3 category vehicles, some GTEs will sneak their way into things as well. But from where we were looking in terms of the composition of what sort of vehicles we were going to get, we're actually a little bit surprised with the choices. Many of the times that we have gone to events, especially through the 6 events that we had earlier on in the year here, Nicholas, when it came to the official Maltese casual races at Spa-Francorchamps, which pretty much set the tone for who's going to be knocking on the door here today. It was all about the Audi show and how brilliant the Audi was. But we now move it over to here. It's Aston Martins, it's Porsches, it's BMWs. It's a completely different, eclectic mix of cars.
Yeah, the front engines seem to have a bit of a, well, better edge on this circuit. They did seem quite impressive on the straight all the time as well. And of course, it's a little bit more stable on high loads to drive. And here we have one of the Aston Martins in the picture with a well-known driver for us already, Windy. And of course, this is the fantastic V12 Vantage GT3. Anyone who has had this car in person definitely will always remember it until the day they stop to think about it.
Absolutely they do. Down the Forest Elbow and onto the fabled Conrod Straight. There's so much elevation change around this place, and that camera angle does it complete justice as they run down the hill. And this is one of the few tracks where you could honestly say here today that there has to be a little bit of mentality going around this place, and that mentality is staying with the car in front. You've got two very long straights to go and get something happening, but the big key is you've got two straights back to back when you go down the Conrod through the chase, through Murray's Corner, the final one, and then you're headed through turn one. You've got another opportunity up the hill. The big difficulty around this lap is that mountain, because overtaking becomes such a huge issue today, but they do have an advantage compared to what they have, say, a week ago, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks, 4 weeks ago here, Nicholas, and that's the fact that the tyre wear here today is a lot less than it was. What we saw for the first three challenges, they had 9 times the rate of wear acceleration, if I can get my words out. What they have today is only 2 times the rate of accelerated tyre wear, so they have a lot more life in the tyre to go and play with over the hour.
Yeah, most definitely. And I'd say just overall, it is a lot easier, in consistency's sake, with more regular flowing tire wear, to just constantly keep it going. And, I mean, we saw Kyokodo, of course, just having no issue whatsoever throughout this entire thing. He's also in an Aston Martin here, very nice livery as well here. Very colorful indeed, and but yeah, I think a lot of the other drivers who maybe have been struggling a little bit with tire wear, because as we knew, you had one small burnout or one lockup or something, and of course your tires would take an immense beating from it. This time, this won't be that critical, so maybe we'll have more people be able to attack at the same way that Kyokodo has been attacking and the way that Windy has been attacking.
We've also got to keep an eye out on Mikael as well in third position. Really gave a run for the money in the early stages of the Formula Challenge 2 weeks ago, which was on ESTV, motorsport.tv, of course on the fantastic TVM Sport, and of course on World Pro Racing's YouTube, Facebook Live and Twitch. You can catch that on replay anytime you like if you go to worldproracing.com or wherever you find your syndication. But crucially here today, I want to talk about Kyokodo, because I had a good little 5-10 minute conversation with Kyokodo after the event at Spielberg 2 weeks ago, and he looked at me and he said, this is not going to be as easy today at Mount Panorama Bathurst. He was expecting this one to be a lot closer than it was in terms of the victory he had in Formula-style vehicles. And it shows in practice at the moment. There's only one driver breaking the sub-2 minute barrier, and that's Windy on a 59.9. Kyokodo may have a little bit more trouble today from a driver such as Windy. And you have to remember as well, Kyokodo, in terms of live on broadcast here over 2020, has been unbeaten so far this year.
Yeah, and perhaps, he was quite nervous. I spoke to him as well, and honestly, for someone who has been so dominant so far, it kind of speaks books, so, to actually say, yeah, it's definitely not going to be as easy this time. So either he's playing, Mercedes-style tactics with, oh yeah, we are the underdogs this time, or he's actually, quite a bit more nervous this time. And either way, I think it's definitely food for thought here, as he's, oh, that is very close there. Doesn't want to do that in the race, because that can be very, very quickly the last moment in your race that you're going to have.
That corner is so easy to just take advantage of and for it to all fall away. That's the corner right up there, McPhillamy Park, which leads to Peter Brock's skyline. Peter Brock, of course, a 9-time winner of the great race, the Bathurst 1000, and doing an amazing job is Kyokudo here to try and follow in the tracks. But let's just talk here a little bit about driver mentalities and how drivers sometimes suit a certain style of track, certain style of car, but don't with others. And with Kyokudo, they've already driven in these style of vehicles a number of times before. So I don't think it's a case of Group 3 cars here in Gran Turismo, or GT3 as it would be more colloquially called, is the problem. I think it's a case of Mount Panorama does not suit the driving style of Kyokudo. I don't think that he is someone who naturally suits, so to say here, Nicholas, the case of just driving pretty neat and narrow. I think he's a driver who likes to be creative, likes a lot of flair, likes to be expansive with the way he drives, but you can't drive like that around this place because you get punished.
Yeah, of course. And what we saw very noticeably at Red Bull Ring, and of course at Spa, where he was so dominant, you know, you have a lot of space between yourself and the barriers there. You can just take all of the momentum with you as you so like. And here, you take a little bit too much space, or you go a little bit too much inside, and instantly there's a wall here, as we can see very nicely here through turn 4. And I mean, he's doing his very best to get right up close to the walls, but of course, maybe it's just, you know, a little bit of nervosity, you know, just a little bit of stress as he's getting right up to the wall. Just look at that. That's barely, you can barely fit a hand in there, you know, and of course that causes some underlying stress with some drivers, and some are able to cope with it better than others.
And that's going to be very key here, just how drivers deal with some of the issues here today. And now one of the issues today is we see the driver in 6th place, that's Duminku there, just trying to stay out of the way. Windy driving out of the way as well, was a little bit held up there, coming out of the dipper towards the Forest Elbow. Is that drivers today over the course of this hour race, when they are about to be lapped down, because the circuit is so narrow, the option to ghost through those vehicles is going to be allowed. So normally what you see here in Gran Turismo Sport over the course of races, if you've seen them already or if you are joining us just for the first time, is that when a driver gets a slowdown penalty, drive outside of the confines of the circuit, they normally pick up a little penalty that Windy, for example, has right now, 0.2 of a second's worth of penalty to work with. The key here today is that drivers who are going to be maybe a little bit slower around this one, and an hour gives you a lot more time to be lapped here today, Nicholas, they're going to be able to get out of the way by driving straight through them. It's going to be an alien concept for a lot of people, but what it does allow is a lot more drivers to finish races, and really nullifies that ability of traffic running into each other here, and effectively taking away that variable of someone else ruining your race.
Yeah, and especially at a circuit like Bathurst, of course we have the 2 long straights and this short straight here at the start-finish. And yeah, it's just, you know, 2 90-degree corners between all this. But on the mountain, traffic is so critical because you can have so many different drivers with different set of skills, you know. You can have people who are more secure on this stretch of road, or just so much more nervous, and that is the big difficulty here. If you have that bit of doubt there in the wrong moment, there can be an accident so quickly, and of course that would ruin someone's race. So in this situation, it is definitely not a stupid idea to have this ghosting ability on, and I think it can keep a couple of the fights more alive like this, and also save some of the qualifying runs.
I definitely think it will as well. We're seeing a few drivers here trying to find some times. Carl Matthew is someone we haven't seen too much of, in 5th position right now on the board in practice. And there is one of those beautiful Toyotas there out on track, which Dominku is running with at this moment in time. And this is one of the keys that we do see in terms of how drivers look to go and attack, how drivers look to go and try and race around this place, is that they're looking for the vehicle that they feel most comfortable in. And I think that more important than pace here today in terms of how drivers want to challenge this one, as there is Almike Jackal there in what is 7th position at the moment, trying to challenge this track in an F-type Jag. That's absolutely lovely to see. We haven't seen any Jaguars so far in any events that we've seen. It's lovely to see the Jaguar out and racing. Is that you choose a car that you're comfortable with, because it's not a case of driving around this place in the car that's quickest that will win you it. It's staying alive, staying on the track, and it's that comfortableness that drivers will be searching for that makes it work today, as Ephraim has a little bit of a sideways moment. We're 5 minutes from qualifying.
It's as you said, survival will be key here, and you can have the fastest car. So for example, like we had with the Audi for the Spa races, it seemed to be the dominant car choice there, and that is a very big moment. Maybe a little bit late on the ghosting there, and the man definitely a little bit impeded there with his Porsche. But yeah, he seems to be a little bit unfazed by it. But yeah, as I was saying, the Audi seemed to be, one of the fastest cars for Spa, but we also saw so many people, like Shelinu, for example, have so many issues with it. As soon as you went sideways once through Jackie X corner, you instantly had tire trouble. And of course, this tire trouble stuff is a lot reduced now. But still, you don't want a nervous car. You don't want a car that's completely on edge the entire time for a race like this.
Exactly, and of course with more tyre life to play with, as there's the BMW M6 being driven by John Varro in 12th position at the moment in this field. This is going to be an interesting dynamic. We're expecting the drivers up at the front of the field to be playing with a one-stop strategy, but those may be a little bit further down the order who are going to be using their tyres up a little bit more, as we see a nice a Tenza Mazda there for Kenneth there in the field going forward right now. Half a second's worth of penalty to try and serve. What we do see is the case that some drivers do have that ability to just run themselves into a few troubles here and there. We've always talked about that consistency, that niceness that people are going to have, but really here, Nicholas, I think that talk about how strategy is going to work. Some of those drivers at the back, they'll be looking at a two-stop here today on the tyres, because they are going to be driving a lot more aggressively than those on the one.
Yeah, most definitely, and it's going to be quite interesting to see how the different strategies are actually going to play out, because of course, tire wear here at Mount Panorama, at this mountain, especially the right side tires on top of the mountain are going to be stressed a lot, and yeah, it's going to be a quite different strategy here if you are going to push through the entire thing, or if you want to maybe try and play it slow, maybe try to hold back a little bit, and just stay behind someone else in front of you. Just try to save a bit of fuel, and yeah, it's a difficult call to make in beforehand. It's of course always very situational, and I think it's going to be interesting to see how people will tackle it, because of course Windy, for example, he was one of the guys who usually sticks with the normal strategy, but Kyokuro as well. But I think Kyokuro is one of these guys, when he's actually pressed for pace, I think he might go for the unlimited push strategy, try to make it work with a two-stop, and just try to get a lighter fuel load, with softer tire compound, and just make it through the race with two stops, and maybe get out ahead. Complete Michael Schumacher in France style with a four-stop strategy.
We understand that sort of way that things go, and we saw Michael Schumacher a little bit earlier on in the promotion package for the motorsport.com documentary of Heroes, which featured some of the greats of racing. Of course, there was Felipe Massa, Mika Hakkinen, and you can even talk about the very underrated and understated influence that Michele Mouton had in the world of racing as well. And you can catch that, of course, with motorsport.com, and you can have some fantastic times watching some amazing stuff that goes on with motorsport.com, as well as motorsport.com moving over to a motorsports games branch like to the British Touring Car Championship with a license. Of course, NASCAR Heat moving on to a brand new NASCAR engine. That's going to be something interesting to keep in mind as well in terms of the racing game sphere of how everything's going to be coming up and along. Worth noting ever so quickly as well, we're about a minute away from qualifying. Two Windies here today. Got Windy Boy, who of course is the fast Windy, in pole position at the moment, but 8th place you can see on the timing tower on the left-hand side. Il Windy will be trying to get everything going forward as well. 8th place will be looking at a mid to late pack scrap, but of course qualifying will be coming up on the horizon. So, Nicholas, 15 minutes of qualifying. What are these drivers going to be thinking about when they go in, knowing that the tyres are going to be lasting, and it's all about, do I have enough fuel? Do I have enough life in these tyres? Do I have enough to go 15 minutes, knowing that if I make a mistake, I've already lost 2 minutes of time, and if I'm pitting again, there goes a third of my session.
That is going to be the big one, because of course you have 15 minutes, so theoretically 7 attempts. But of course, if you're going to get those 7 attempts nailed down, you know, if you want to go all of that in one go, with the normal tire wear now, you can attempt it. But if it's going to last in that optimum, you know, grip window, that's the different question. And of course, it's all about, you know, if they can actually get that pace together, if they can get maybe a slipstream if they pit now and come out in front behind someone who's a bit slower than them. So, you know, there's a lot of strategy, especially for Bathurst, because you see a lot of the strategy also coming in real life or just other simulators as well. As we're now heading up the mountain already, Kyokudo is in front of Windy right now. And I think he will try his best to get a good run on the mountain right now. To, you know, not to give Windy a chance to gain time through slipstream down the hill.
Well, one of the easiest things to say is that the best place to be at Mount Panorama Bathurst is at the front, because if you started to chase and follow behind, the moment there is a wreck around this place, this track has a very big tendency, like the street circuit of Macau, like the streets of Monte Carlo at Monaco, it has a tendency to clog up and even block the circuit. So drivers will have to be careful here. Qualifying's going to be key, and Kyokudo will be looking for an incredibly quick time in that Aston Martin. Nicholas, this is where you put your best foot forward and you put your banker lap in on the table. Who's going to feel like they've got the best banker and give themselves the psychology advantage here for this session?
Kyokudo, of course, is always a hot shout, but as we have long discussed now, he doesn't feel that confident, as he says, and Windy, with half a second, and you know, last time we saw them race, you know, Mikhail was less than a tenth behind Kyokudo. We thought that was the big break now, that Mikhail was going to challenge him. It didn't turn out that way in the end, but of course, half a second, that's over 5 times the gap now. And of course, Windy we've known for quite a lot of consistency as well.
We've just gone through turn number 1, Hell's Corner, the rise up the mountain straight towards turn number 2 and the Griffin's Bend here. Such a tough corner. You hit the brakes and you hope the car grips, and there it does for Kyokudo there, going through using all the track there on the exit. Now running up towards the cutting, turns 3 and 4. Have to hit the brakes slightly. You can see the anti-lock brakes were coming into full effect as now heading back up the hill, turn 5. Nice little house there actually up there on the right hand side. They've got a really nice tennis court there. But now through the seat 6, 7 and you start continuing on through the left right now. This is such a tough section of track, the metal grate, and now over through McPhillamy and towards one of the fastest, most scariest corners, Peter Brock Skyline, and you start dropping down the hill again, through the left, through the right. The Big Dipper drop can always catch you out if you're not too careful. Uses all the road there on the exit, and now dropping down the hill for the Forest Elbow. Always got to be heavy on the brakes. The nice narrow line gives you the grip, and now here, Nicholas, the run down Conrad.
Very nice play-by-play there that you gave, and as you say, now down Conrad straight. Such a long straight in World Motorsport, already up to 250 kilometers an hour. Waiting, still waiting. Now up to 6th gear, and you see the complete speed just rising up over 270, just barely before 100 meters on the brakes. 3rd gear through this corner, and now making his way towards Murray's Corner. Of course, the Chase, probably one of the most insane motorsports corners in the world. And here, 2nd gear, a bit, I don't know, a bit washed out at the end of the corner, and Kyokudo sets the first banker, which is a 2:14, and Windy immediately faster. So Windy already puts the pressure on right from the get-go.
Mikhail jumping into second as well at 2:01.458, marginally quicker than Kyokudo then. So Windy sets the pace, a quarter of a second clear. Mr. Colin puts in times. Ilwindi sets a nice time, goes to fifth. Ephraim there jumping up into sixth place, but Kyle Matthew jumps up into fifth place on a 2:05.1. So this is going to be key to see who's going to find those times. A lot of drivers will be struggling. You can see exactly where the drivers are situated on trackers. Look at that from Al Mike there, going into fifth place on a 2:04.7. It's mighty close at the top. They're all knocking on 2:04s. Half a second splitting the top 5 drivers at the moment. You can see on the mini-map there on the right-hand side of your screen, that's where everybody is out on track at the moment. And what is crucial is that a lot of drivers are giving themselves a lot of gaps there. As you can see, Windy being very aggressive down Skyline, and very easily you can run yourself into a world of troubles if you're starting to get a little bit too aggressive around this place, hitting the brakes into the forest elbow. And Nicholas, this is the key. It's all about being aggressive here and trying to maximize the laps. But this is a place where you can't be too aggressive. There's a lot of similarities to the Nordschleife, for example, a lot of similarities to Le Mans and other great endurance tracks that also hold a lot of a special place in people's hearts. And that is that you have to be very, very cautious and respect what this track has to offer.
Well, you know, they always say respect the bumps at Sebring, and I would say for Bathurst, you don't have to respect a single thing, you have to respect everything. You saw it earlier at the Dipper, Windy, on a normal grip level, you know, just on a normal track. The way he turns in for the Dipper, he would normally just end up in the wall.
Wow.
And look at that lap from Windy, 2:00.651, a solid half second faster there. And Kyokudo, he stays in second for now. Mikhail wasn't quite able to put another fastest one there, but only a 10th behind. But yeah, as I said, Windy, he's turning in so aggressively there for the Dipper because the road just sacks away there. You need that turn-in angle so the car actually grips at the front. It's just absolutely crazy at this track.
And one of the things here, with only 2 times the rate of wear on these tyres for this event, is going to be the crucial fact that drivers will be looking to try and get the tyres up to temperature and then go and attack us. For example, Al Mike sets a time of 2:03.8 to improve John Varro to a 2:05.3, jumps into 8th place. Deman, we haven't talked about Deman, in 7th place right now. Number 1, he calls himself right now. Well, he's 6 places off of that right now. He's in 7th place. But Windy here in control. Half a second now, the gap to play with. But this is what's very crucial about this place. Look how early Windy's turning for the corner, playing with gravity, playing with everything going on. There's Kyokudo with 3 seconds of penalty to work with. I wouldn't be surprised if Kyokudo's just going to pull this one over, let the penalty go down, and then decide, you know what? I'm just going to dive this one down into the pits, get a new set on, and try and go again, because it's so easy to just make that small correction, that small mistake, because crashes around here, they are never small at any place on track, Nicholas.
That is definitely true. We've seen so many big crashes here, and of course, since this average speed, especially on the mountain, no matter if it's uphill or downhill, the average speed is just so high at this track because there's just never a really sharp corner. It's all so tight, but there's always this fine little thin just line barely going through that you can take with so much speed. No improvement this time, and you know, we see Kyokudo already pulling in, and yeah, it's just definitely so easy to just make a big mistake here. Mikhail improves, gets within 1/10 of a second of him. Cellino improves another one as well, 2:02.4, and I mean, all of them are quite close together, you know, it's always just barely a couple of seconds apart. And 2:04 here with Mr. Colin now, 2:04.19. We see so many different cars here, you know, just a lot closer together than we are used to seeing in the Group 3 class. It's quite nice to see here.
Absolutely, it is. Mr. Colin jumps to 6th. We got Kyle in 7th. We'll catch a replay of this one there. So Cellino going through, but it's Kyokudo who has the moment as well. So Cellino goes in too deep, hits the wall. Kyokudo gets caught out there on the outside. That's where all the marbles and the dirty stuff all starts to gather there on the edge of the circuit with all the grass that comes up off the track. And that's why it's so easy for things to go wrong if you're dipping tyres outside the parameters of the white lines here around this place. There is Mikael in the Velocity Motorsport green car there. Third position, big kick of tail going down the dipper. That won't be helping that V12 Vantage out too much at all, but it's clear the top three want to race with each other today. Then fourth place, 1.1 seconds back off the pace. But slipstream today, that could be the difference of half a second on a straight.
I think that's also one of the reasons why Kyokoto chose to just pull over after Forest Elbow, because he knew that he was not going to make any improvement there with the 3-second penalty. And, well, you know, of course, from a competitive standpoint, you'd rather just pull over, let your opponent go past, instead of helping them, you know, maybe go for another banker lap that you definitely won't be able to beat at that stage. And I think that is definitely the big strategy play here from Kyokoto. He's now completely offset as well from Windy, but Windy's also in the pits now, so we have to see where they come out. Maybe Kyokoto is going to come out right behind Windy here, as we can see him go around Hell Corner now. Very easy to... it looks very easy to do, but one would be surprised how difficult it actually is, because it looks so simple. The inside curb is incredibly high though, so when you hit that, you have killed your entire momentum up the uphill straight. And of course, these cars have 500 to 600 horsepower. But of course, you still need every bit of momentum that you can carry up a hill, because they, of course, weigh over 1,000 kilos.
Exactly, and that's the key here. It's that balance of power to weight ratio that so often makes a car quick or not. Kyle Matthew there gains 0.8 of a second on the lap, but still somehow does not gain any positions. So still a lot of work to do to jump up to the likes of Shalinu in fourth position here in this one. But Kyokoto needs to find some time. Half a second is the margin here, but look at the clock there, Nicholas, on the right-hand side of your screen. It says 3.5 minutes, and it keeps ticking on down, down, down. So what's the big worry? Well, running out of laps is going to be the key. There's only 2, you'd feel, left to go for Kyokoto if the time is going to be set here at this point.
Yeah, and it's definitely going to be a bit of a stress factor. He has quite a number to beat here. 200.6. Of course, we've seen faster in practice, but either way, I think, you know, they started a little bit heavier in this session. So, of course, everyone wants to burn as much fuel as possible. Everyone wants their car to be as light as possible. And, of course, they want fresh tires. You see the red glowing brakes there from Kyokoto's car as he turns in for the chase there, turn 21. And now making his way to Murray's Corner to start another lap. I think he would be able to do maybe 2 more laps on the limit if he makes it completely perfect. But these ones will have to sit, and that is Kyokoto right on the tail of Windy Boy there. 14 thousandths of a second. Can you believe it?
It's close, but it's not enough yet, Kyokoto. Windy remembers on fresher tyres, but we'll need to get them up to temperature. Mikael's only going to get 1 flying lap on a new set of tyres, so those top 3, they're going to have a really interesting battle right now, and Mikael's going to cross the line with only maybe about 11 seconds to spare, maybe even 10, making the push over to the line. So those 3, those are the key battlegrounds there, as Dominku there jumps up with a 204.6, moves up to 8th place here in qualifying. A key little time there, seeing that one go forward, but they've got an hour's worth of racing to think about. Remember, qualifying does not guarantee you the victory overall here in this event. It gives you the best possible chance right now, and there are 3 drivers who are probably best placed here in this one, Nicholas, to go and find that said best possible chance.
And this might not be it. I was about to say, look at the aggression from Winnie there through the dipper, but maybe a little bit too much aggression. 3 seconds now that he'll have to just let go by. Of course he can do another lap, but he is looking mighty fast nevertheless, and yeah, definitely an exciting race to come. So make sure you guys watching all stay here. This is definitely one for the books, I think.
Absolutely. There's the slowing from Windy. just backing out the lap. It's now going to be a shootout here, like it was 2 weeks ago at Spielberg when everybody suddenly found a second's worth of pace. Kyokudo will need to find 14 thousandths. Mikhail there has stayed quiet, is almost 0.6 of a second back off of the quickest time possible. Here is Kyokudo through the final corner. Now, is there anything more of improvement? We'll be looking at the times, trying to find it. It's a late run to the line here, and there's no improvement there. Mikhail starts to fly with 30 seconds left on the clock. This is the last lap scramble, so everyone's looking for times. Gelino improves, though, to a 2:02.1, moves within a second of Mikhail there in what is going to be that next position. Kyle Matthew pushes a bit too far wide, though. Was a little bit behind Mr. Collin as well in the white and yellow going through. Now the left-hander of Murray's, and Mr. Collin has a big slide and goes straight to the inside. So that's going to be an interesting battle in the mid-pack. But Windy now through the cutting, up the hill. The timer has expired, and they've all got to get themselves around and finish their laps. But Windy is going to be looking for it. Look at that wiggle going up through the right and left.
Yeah, it's really do or die time. Look at that. The rear wing just scraping along the wall, throwing up sparks. Look at the speed he's carrying now through McPhillamy Park, down to Skyline, over the crest. Completely on the inside, very hard over the curbs, and very close to the inside there. Look at another one there, very aggressive, but
That's gone.
That might have been it, yeah. And that's half a second as well.
Lap's gone. Windy's got nothing there then. Kyokudo's looking for times. Ephraim's found a bit of improvement a little bit further down, so Kyokudo's got to find something. Maybe Mikhail just behind might have the magic formula, but this is the run down Conrod here. The big long straight to the fastest corner in Australian sim racing today. That one being the chase, as there is the man, 2:04.6, jumping up into 8th place in qualifying through the chase. Goes Kyokudo and onto the brakes into the chicane at the chase. Now as they go through the left and the right. Reservations on the hotel on that right-hand side. They get booked up a year in advance. You have to really make sure you get yourself something there. But Kyokudo goes for the final corner at Murray's. Searches for 14 thousandths only as he makes the charge to the line. Is it going to be enough? It is! By half a tenth! There goes Mikhail, only goes third. He was 3/10 off with a 2:08. Kyokudo has found it in the clutch once again.
Kyokudo and Mikhail, I have to honestly say, since 2 weeks ago, these guys are always absolutely on point for a last-minute smacker in the qualifying. It's just so incredible to watch. Both of them on their lap, pushing on the limits. Windy, of course, having this very unfortunate moment at the dipper, and then just out of nowhere, they see that red mark coming up. They see he has a penalty. He can't improve anymore. And you could see the glowing in their eyes, the fire in their eyes just coming up, going through the last lap, and they absolutely done it. Mikhail, of course, didn't improve by a position, but he gave quite a scare there, only 2/10. And there was quite a time improvement from everyone.
Absolutely there was, as we go to pictures right now here of the grid lining up. It's an hour's worth of racing here, and the top three, oh my goodness, Windy buckled at the time he needed to find a little bit more. We've seen him break the 2-minute barrier, but Kyokudo will have the advantage. Here's the short little pace that they are going to have. They're going to be under automated conditions before they get the 3, 2, and 1, and they'll be released for an hour's worth of racing here. You can see it on the clock, but Kyokudo now will lead the field forward. An hour starts now. Who will beat Mount Panorama Bathurst as they make the run to Hell Corner? Turn number 1, Kyokudo, Windy, Mikhail, Shalinu, Kyle, Matthew. They're in 5th place, already under pressure in 6th. They can see Dominku there in 9th, with likes of Kenneth there in the Mazda in 11th, and Il Windy, and there's a car off already at Jean Varro into the wall. 1 corner gone, 1 casualty.
Yeah, definitely not the start he wanted. And we talked about the qualifying being so close at the front, but around the entire field, you know, we have these groups of people just being within just a couple tenths, and we have something else in the background there. That is another spin. And who is that? I think that might have been, was it Kenneth? No, I think it wasn't. He's still going there. That's another car. That's a white car. That's Colin, yes. Very unfortunate there. Ran a little bit wide, maybe a bit missed his braking marker, and then just came onto the marbles. No stability there, and now, of course, he's desperate to catch back up. Meanwhile, at the front, though, Windy already starting to chase Kyokudo so close through McPhillamy Park and now over Skyline.
I've just looked on the map. It looks like we may have had a track blockage there, up there at the cuttings. So it looks like there could have been some big troubles there. Ephraim's slow as anything else. So get a little look. So Ephraim's run into troubles there and has gone slow. Mr. Collins gone through as well. And there has just been drama upon drama upon drama there at the back. But Kyokudo, Windy, Mikhail at the moment there in third. But Kyokudo's got to be careful here. Mikhail's going to start getting aggressive, moving forward. Strike at the earliest available opportunity. Will he pull over to the right? Yes, it's Noah's Ark racing. It's too wide, it's too deep. Shalinu trying to get by Mikhail. Windy can't find it on the brakes at the chase at the moment, but Shalinu there down the inside has penalty to serve, does Mikhail, but there goes Shalinu then up into third position, exactly what's needed. Mikhail will try and fight this one straight back, has all the time in the world to serve that 1.3 seconds, and it works. Windy looking wide, trying to find the race lead. A lap's completed, and the front drivers are starting to fight.
We're here on the mountain, but it's Battle City everywhere. We have Windy chasing down the leader, and of course we have Mikhail and Shalinu. I think Mikhail wasn't expecting quite such a fight from Shalinu here, but of course Shalinu, you know, we always see him with some surprise coming up in these races. Now looking for the inside, going over the grass there, very aggressive. Looking down the inside of turn 2, not quite able to make it there. And of course, Mikhail, meanwhile, still has to deliver this penalty.
Shalinu there, looking like he went to the Ryan Hunter Ray School of Overtaking. The one issue is he couldn't get it done. Going to try and put two tyres onto the grass, and bang, into the wall goes Shalinu. So easy to do when you're running in the coattails of someone else. There is a dirty air effect here as those drivers, I think that was Windy, just clipping the wall at the metal grate, heading through McPhillamy and now towards Brock Skyline once again. It's so easy to just put yourself slightly wrong. A half a car out of position puts you in a world of trouble. Now watch this Forest elbow here for Kyokudo at this moment. On the brakes, he takes the narrow line. Windy takes the wide line. Both lines work, but Kyokudo putting the power down now knows, well, now it's time for the slipstream. What can I do to recover?
It's time to defend for him again. And you could always see up on the mountain, Windy was trying to be a little bit offset from Kyokudo. You know, maybe just get a little bit out of that dirty air. Now, as he's here, he now wants to be inside. And that's very aggressive defending. And of course, very aggressive on the brakes there again. Ooh, are they going to have contact? No, it stays clean. That was very close there. And I almost thought that would have resulted in a big crash. But of course, these two absolutely know what they're doing. They're fighting on the utmost limit here. We've seen them do it so many times before.
This is crazy. This is an hour-long race, and they're racing like they've got a couple of laps to go. They're racing like the entire race depends on this moment. Kyokudo holding back Windy just enough at this stage, and this is key. There is Al Mike in the Jaguar there in 5th position, ahead of the Aston Martin of Kyle in 6th. So Al Mike making good progress, 7th and 8th looking close, as well as Dominku there has the man behind and the only Porsche in the field in terms of that battle. Kyokudo having to defend again at turn 2 there at Griffin's Bend, which is never quite the idea that you're looking for. Up to the cutting at 3 and 4. Kyokudo knows that the mountain is a safe place. Don't have to worry about being overtaken here. The big worry will be, well, are you still going to be in range when you get down to the elbow?
I think that is actually a two-sided sword, though, because, of course, you can't really overtake on the mountain, but Windy can sure as hell put a lot of pressure on Kyokudo there. We saw how close he could get on the mountain, on these downforce corners, even in the dirty air, and, you know, he could still stick with him, and, of course, Kyokudo is going to be thinking about that. And of course, he's going to be scared at that. And Mikhail, meanwhile, trying to slowly, you know, just get rid of his penalty. He's not that far away. Kyokudo again taking the very tight line, but of course, he's still within slipstream range. And meanwhile, Mikhail is also getting a bit closer because Kyokudo and Windy, while it's spectacular what they do, they slow each other down quite a bit every single time they go side by side like this.
They certainly do, and if you want to get social with us here, World Pro Racing, you can find us at Facebook. You can find us on Twitter. You can find us on Instagram. You can find us wherever you can at the moment. The leading battle still continuing here with 54 minutes to go. But now here's another thing that's going to be key here. Strategy here on the fuel, because Windy can just very comfortably sit behind for half an hour, wait for Kyokudo's fuel to get used up a little bit more, and maybe even save a little bit on the tyres as they go through turn 1 there of Hell's Corner. A little bit Raggedy Ann from Kyokudo, and this could be the chance that Windy was waiting for. It's going to have to be a case of hugging the right-hand side here for Kyokudo, trying to get this one. We go on board from the driver's eyes perspective here. Will have to be the long way around here at turn 2 that Windy's going to get this one done. Last of the late breakers in. Windy's going to be caught out on the one-track line turn 2. If you're going to get it done, it has to be the inside if you're going to make it happen at turn 2.
Yeah, he slid up onto the marbles there, and of course, I was about to say, you know, not very tire saving from Kyokudo there, with that sideways moment for Hell Corner, but at the same time, for Griffin's Bend, not very much tire saving from Windy there, sliding over the marbles. But as we said before, this is all just slowing each other down bit by bit. It's 2.5 seconds right now to Mikhail, but of course he's still able to keep up. Meanwhile, in 5th place here, we have the Jag of Almik, and of course at the same time we have Carl Matthew right behind him, only 8/10, maybe a little bit of a penalty, but he can still stick with him, and less than a second behind this Toyota here. We have the only Porsche in the field, as you said. People are still sticking together. There's a lot of battling going on down straight through the entire field.
Everyone's sort of migrating into their own little packs at the moment. John Varro hasn't got the biggest gap in the world over Il Windy for 11th and 12th, just clipping the wall side by side down Conrad. Windy's got a great run here, and for the first time has the inside for the first kink right. Gets the overlap sorted. Kyokudo's got to come straight back. He has to back out a bit slightly though. Windy's got it, but has it run too deep? Kyokudo going around the outside. Tyres go into the grass, but the foot keeps being put in as they go towards the final corner. Kyokudo is putting everything on the staunch defense, and they'll be side by side towards turn 1 again. The mountain straight on the horizon, and Mika, remember, is just behind this one, and he's loving what he's seeing because he can close that gap. The more they fight side by side, Kyokudo has a little moment there going through, but crucially gets track position, can force Windy whichever way he wants to, and it will be the high road. If you take the high road, Kyokudo will make sure he takes the low road, and he'll hope to get to the corner before Windy, and it looks like that may just be the case again. On the brakes into turn number 2. This is sensational.
Windy learned from his last lap here, already sticking back before the turning point, so he was making sure he would be on the inside, just like Kyokudo, to be right on his tail. And as we said earlier, there's Mikhail. He's constantly just watching, waiting for the two to slow each other down even more. And we see how much they are pushing. Mikhail now within, I think, 1.5 seconds. Still that little penalty, but there's still plenty of time for him to deliver it. And they're going around McPhillamy Park once more. Look at how close to the wall Windy is taking that. Kyokudo is leaving a little bit of a gap there, but Windy, he's looking always just for that gap, almost as if he's aiming between Kyokudo's car and the wall.
It's a pixel's width. That's all they've got at the moment through the Forest Elbow. Windy runs wide, though, through that section. Has to try and gather back up the car again. And just like that, for this lap at least, there is a little bit of respite for Kyokudo in the leading vantage there. There's Carl Matthew, penalty served in 6th place, trying to chase down Al Mike. And now we're looking at this one because there is issues for the Porsche of Daman here, heading through at the metal grate. Now towards McPhillamy Park here, the big left-hander, and what goes wrong? A case of taking too much out of it, and that is vintage up there towards Skyline of an accident. It happens all the time, and it happens more than you think it does.
Yeah, it's just so close. If you get the line properly and if you have the car settled perfectly, you can take that corner flat out. But do a tiny mistake and you can see it go wrong, just like the man just had it happen to him. But now once more, nose to tail coming out of Hell Corner. Windy gonna look down, probably down the outside, because I think Kyokudo once again will stick to the inside for this corner, as he has done before. And now Mikhail, of course, he won't have as much fun because of course they're not holding each other up as much anymore. But meanwhile, a couple positions behind them, Almik is being chased by Kyle. A duel of the Brits, Battle of Britain here, Jaguar versus Aston Martin, and so far it's still looking quite comfortable for the Jag, but that can change very quickly.
Oh, it certainly can at the front as well. Look at this, nose to tail, one small mistake and everybody gets themselves caught into a concertina sandwich, and it's just this track. It does it time and time again. It creates close racing, it creates packs, and it makes sure that the bravest of the brave have the opportunity to go out and race as they traverse down the hill once again. And I am very, very interested to know on how this is all faring out, because I think Mikael could be in the best position. Little bump there going through the forest elbow. Make yourself known, says Windy. He uses the chrome horn and he says, well, I'm being held up here. You're backing me up here into Mikael, and neither of us really want to be in a race here with the car in third place. So they traverse themselves down the mountain. Through Conrad they go now towards the chase once more. Windy's got a really good run, looking for the inside, tries to open up the gap like a tin can opener, and he's not going to find it just yet.
Yeah, but they keep on battling. You said they don't want a three-way fight, but I don't think that they will have a say in this, because the only one having a say right now is Mika, looking down the inside very late into Murray's corner and still sticking with the three. Now he's within slipstream range, and he's definitely not going to let them go now.
Absolutely not, and you can definitely see how Kyokudo hasn't got the easiest of times through turn number one. He's definitely a lot more aggressive on the angle there. He leaves a lot more in the opening apex there, but when he diamonds it back off again, he's all nice and clean here, trying to get as much out of the exit as possible. Windy again forced to look on the outside, looking in through turn two, and once more, there's nothing there. I am a little concerned at Kyokudo's rear tyres, though, and how much they are being used up, because if this does continue and he has to keep on being more and more aggressive on those tyres, he will wear them out a lot more, and that pit stop window, you would feel, if you want to be aggressive, opens up in 20 minutes. But the moment anybody pits in this three-car train, everyone else has to jump.
Yeah, I think they're really the commanding forces here right now, and it's going to be interesting how the rest of the field reacts to it. Cellino, of course, he was fighting with Mikael earlier, and he's just disappeared a little bit up in this own little gap, and 6 seconds back and 14 seconds to the rear. He has a bit of a void, and honestly, I think that's a bit more preferable than this constant barrage of attacks and defenses that we have here in the top three.
It certainly is. Mika looking a lot closer than Windy. Mistakes down the mountain for Windy this time by means that Kyokudo gets a little bit of a break. 9/10 of a second now the gap opens up to be, but this is also key for Mikael in terms of how he's running this race. If he can't find a way through, well, there's 7/10 of penalty that's hanging over like a Damocles. It might just be a case of just sitting behind these two, just serving the penalty as and when it comes along, and the Aston Martin V12 Vantage GT3 battle at the front could be heading the way of the Green Velocity Motorsports car. On the brakes into the final section once more and looking for another lap. It seems like Kyokudo has finally got the foot down. The gap is 1.1 seconds, and that's crucial because that semblance of draft that is there for Kyokudo, Windy now is going to have to get back on pure pace.
Yeah, Kyokudo is probably going to get a little bit of a break now as we have Wiggly Cellino back in the picture. 8 seconds back now and 1.4 second penalty, but still, you know, he can keep driving at his own pace. He has a nice position right now, and of course, you know, first position behind the podium is never a bad spot to be, especially when one of the first three guys makes a mistake. But now, the gap that we just said, everyone's sliding to the outside of the cutting there. I think everyone's starting to have a little bit of tire trouble already, because it seems that the tires, not just the rear tires, they're all just starting to give up a bit.
They're all trying to get aggressive there. 3/10 off in the first sector alone here from Windy. Another little tap there going through the metal grate. That won't be doing too many favours. Every little tap will just be unsettling the bodywork. It will be knocking about a few components in the car. Nobody will be too happy or too pleased with the way that this is going. Mikhail as well following very nicely. The gap 0.7 of a second, but crucially it's still within 1 at the moment for Mikhail, but knows that time's always going to be dropping away when Windy is going to be charging. Was effectively the fastest in practice at the moment, as there is the man back into 8th place ahead of Kenneth in 9th there in the Mazda, and doing a good job, actually, you could say here. It's Kenneth in 9th place. We haven't talked too much about those in the mid to back of the pack, but Kenneth's having a really good race at the moment.
Yeah, most definitely. He seemed a bit further down the grid at the start, seemed a bit troubled to find his pace at the start, but, you know, slow and steady wins the race as well. He started moving up the grid, and meanwhile, Kyokudo was able to build a bit of a gap again, because Windy is going into the pits for a very early pit stop.
Now, this is a real confidence moment. I wonder here if Windy's going to turn onto a 2-stop strategy here, try and use the pace in the tyres and get this one going. It's another set of soft that get themselves back out and away with the automated pit stop that is done here in the Gran Turismo sports system, and back out and away in 3rd place. Now here's the big catch-22. Do you go to the 1-stop strategy and keep on that time that you've got going on, knowing you're going to lose that lead and hoping that Windy's on a 2? Or is this going to be a case of Windy going to try and hold on 45 minutes on a set of tyres, which are going to be aching out and crying out in pain in the last 15 minutes?
Yeah, I think Windy won't be able to finish it on this fuel tank. He was standing there quite long refueling the car, but the amount of fuel that was already gone, 50% of the entire fuel tank, I think that he will definitely have to stop again. And now is the difference if Mikhail and Kyokudo actually react to his strategy, if they go for a 2-stop as well, because Windy, he does have the pace to make this 2-stop work and still come out on top, I think. Because Kyokudo was really struggling. He was struggling with the rears, as we've seen a lot. And, you know, maybe if he just keeps it going for that much longer, maybe his pace drops off enough for Windy to, you know, make this move, make this push through the race and, you know, just come out on top in the end.
The big key here in this battle is the fact that Windy came out ahead of Shalinu, who was the next nearest challenger to these front 3. What that means is that if anybody is trying the 1-stop behind these drivers, Windy is immediately ahead of the next 1-stop strategy driver. It's a race about these 3, and if they come together, there is more to be had. Here's the other Windy, though. Windy fighting John Varro, 11th and 12th position. Kyokudo has to cover off the move, and Mikhail soon follows as they both dive down into the pits. So this is going to be key. You can see that Mikhail has used more fuel, 44% of the tank compared to 47 right now from Kyokudo. So this is a key here. They're going early. Now, that's very interesting from Kyokudo. He's come out behind Mikhail, who has not taken any fuel at all in that pit stop to get out ahead and gain the track position, both ahead of Windy, who took a lot more fuel than anybody else. So this is a fuel numbers game now we're looking at, and Mikhail here is going to have a long final stop, so track position becomes key. Kyokudo must dispatch of Mikhail quickly.
It's actually looking quite interesting right now, and you mentioned that, you know, with less fuel being taken, part of me is kind of thinking at the moment, you know, is one of them maybe aiming for a 3-stop? And it sounds a bit insane, but then again, we've seen more insane strategies, you know, working, so it's quite difficult to see, actually. And for Mikhail, of course, you know, he is now ahead. If he can keep the people behind blocked long enough, it could work for his strategy, indeed.
Certainly could. It's worth noting Mikhail took no fuel, but Kyokudo took 1/5 of a tank in that fuel stop, went from 47% of a tank to 67% of a tank. So what's key here in terms of how Kyokudo's running this race, he was able to save more fuel than what Mikhail was, who was trying to catch down this group up in front. But more importantly than that, now has that focus, can sit in behind Mikhail if he wants to, and go and save that fuel here over the course of this next stint. Both of them, though, have to be worried about what Windy's pace is going to be capable of, because that pace on tyres that are up to temperature, so to speak, is going to be really worth watching at the moment. Both Almike and Kyle Matthew both came down into the pits that last time by as well. They remain in 5th and 6th position at the moment, but they would have also been thinking about pitting at this stage early as well, just to avoid any traffic and to avoid any real worries here at the moment. We've got one driver down there in the pits who is going to fall a lap down at the moment, and in comes Shalinu then to make the stop, and it is very firmly a two-stop race here today, here at the moment for all of the drivers at the front, but this is more traditional from Shalinu, who has gone longer than all of the rivals but in front of them have, so this is definitely a case of for Shalinu splitting this one up here 20-20-20.
Yeah, and the way he's splitting it up most definitely seems that way, that he's splitting up 20-20-20. He's not going for full fuel, and that is Carl Matthew a bit slow there. Something happened there. That is... yes,
Straight
that is
on.
just way off. Missed his braking point there in the BP white and green Aston Martin, so not quite the racing line that you want to take. Meanwhile at the front, Mikhail, his penalty is gone, but yeah, the distance is closing either way. Kyokudo is really starting to push now. That it was once 1.5 seconds, it's now half of that, and meanwhile, it was 3 seconds last lap, 3.4 if I remember correctly for Windy, and it's now 2.5, 2.6, and it doesn't matter if his car is a little bit heavier right now. I think Windy is not a man to back down.
Oh, you can see how close there to the Forest Elbow wall that Windy did go. It's 3.4 to the race leader, 2.5 seconds to Kyokudo, and you feel now that Kyokudo has to be aggressive and get past Mikhail sooner rather than later in terms of this scrap, but the easiest place to defend from is from the front in terms of this race, as we did see Carl Matthew make that mistake earlier on down here at this chase section. I want to talk about that though very, very quickly here. How easy is it to miss your braking marker at the chase? It's the fastest point on the circuit. You're always looking to the right-hand side to make sure you hit your marker. If you miss it by 5 meters, you're going 50 meters straight on.
Most definitely, and of course, it's also about how you have the ABS in this car. It's, yeah, how do you say it best? It's pretty much throwing at a dartboard, and that is very much throwing it into the dartboard of the wall there for Dominku with his Toyota. That is definitely not the line that you want to take, and yeah, it shows how easily upset this car is. Just, the car just seemed loose. I think he tried to slow down in the middle of the corner there, and the Toyota didn't quite like that.
It looked like he was carrying too much speed, missed his marker slightly, and then when the back stepped out, you've got no margin for error there at that section of the road, and the G-forces you get going from a slide into a downhill stop into the wall. It's always a sickening accident when you see it, and this is where we say, thank goodness we are running virtually here on the simulators. This is where brilliant racing comes to life, and there are no real-world ramifications for an accident of that sort of length. Mikhail has started to pick up the pace here ever so slightly, has kept the gap at an arm's length, now to 1.3. Kyokudo really starting to struggle here, just getting too aggressive, and I think he's a little bit worried here as Kyokudo about that gap behind to Windy closing down to 2.1, 2.2 seconds here, because the big crucial factor for Kyokudo is that it doesn't feel natural down the hill. The back is stepping out every which way. It's like watching a spider trying to negotiate a sink which is full of soap.
That's one hell of a metaphor there. But yeah, Kyokudo seems to be losing out a bit of time right now. Not feeling quite as confident maybe as in the last couple laps, because the gap just keeps going back up to the gap that he had when he came out of the pits. And meanwhile, Windy, he seems to be just merrily finding his rhythm once more, starting to close down more and more and more, and this is definitely not the position that Kyokudo wants to be in, because if it plays out like this, they had very short pit stop there. I think the last pit stop they have to make will have to be a little bit longer, or perhaps, they have to measure in as well that Windy's next pit stop will be a very, very short one, because he'll have to take practically no fuel at all.
And this is the key with this middle stint. Windy closing down the gap is just the disaster that Kyokudo and Mikhail do not want here in this one. There is Jean Varo, currently in 9th position at the moment on the road. 2.2 seconds clear of Windy there in 10th. Is 7 seconds behind Mr. Colin, who has done very well to work her way back through the field up into 8th place at this stage. We haven't really seen the lap traffic become a factor. There is Dominku running very wide through the left of the Forest elbow and onto Conrad. But what's been key is looking at those times on the left-hand side of your screen. Not on the ticker timer, but just underneath it. Windy's got the fastest lap of the race today at the moment. It's a 2-minute .3, and that came with fresh tyres.
That came with fresh tyres and a heavier car. So, you know, he's really putting on the pressure now. Kyrkodo just not able to respond to either Mikhail's or to Windy's pace. So, you know, perhaps he was actually speaking the truth with being nervous here. The man, the king, as he had crowned himself with the grand final and the Formula Challenge, you know, he really seems to be struggling on his throne right now, and Windy is doing quite a lot of shaking.
Well, the big key here is that over the course of this lap, the times haven't really fluctuated much. It's stayed relatively even, and this is where you start to get that tyre drop-off when you're driving against the tyre wall. You're looking for a little bit more. It's so easy to see times go a little bit askew. Now, here's the battle 11th and 12th. Dominku and Kenneth here having a scrap in the Japanese car affair at the moment. It's Mazda versus Toyota, and it's going to be a very interesting battle between them right now. Up the hill into the cutting, and you can see, Dominku is all shaded sideways, and it's a case of one car behind being too loose, and one car in front here being too narrow.
Yeah, most definitely. And what is quite noticeable, though, despite that massive impact that he had, he still is able to keep up with the Mazda in front. And now, what is also noticeable, we have the gap growing ever so bigger from Mikhail to Kyrkodo, and the gap ever so smaller from Kyrkodo to Windy. So Windy is really putting on the pressure now. I think Kyrkodo is really starting to struggle here. The sweat is forming underneath his visor there, and of course, on the mountain you have no moment to wipe.
You certainly don't. You have to wait for a big long straight that comes along, and every single sector that comes along, every corner is a different challenge, and you see it time and time again as they see blue flags in front. They will be looking at trying to lap a couple drivers in the not too distant future. There is Windy though, but with a big mistake. Look at that time. It's gone right up to 7.5 seconds. Replay on screen. It's a spin up there at McPhillamy into Skyline, and that is the case of pushing too hard on tyres that are older than what your rivals are running with. Windy's now got to find the laps of his life to get back into this race, and if that's not a wake-up message of being sat there happy and content, suddenly this is a case of Mikhail versus Kyrkodo, and remember, Mikhail's got to take more in the final stop.
But look at this as well here. As if freed from the shackles of the man chasing him down, Kyrkodo has now, you know, just gained 2/10 down the straight. And, you know, of course it's back up again now, but I think it's still a lot less stressful, you know, just chasing someone down without also watching your back. So now Kyrkodo is just free to focus to the front. The gap keeps going down now, 1.3 now, and yeah. It's now hunting season for him.
Absolutely it is. Now that is the key to get on going. Windy's got work to do. 7.5 seconds off of Kyrkodo, 8.8 off of Mikhail at this stage. Windy's on older tyres, remember, and has to really work for it. Shalini, who mind you, in 4th place, having the quietest race in the world. Imagine being 21 seconds away from any other vehicle on circuit. This is going to be an hour of effectively, I would say, Wednesday night driving at this stage.
Well, and for a nice Wednesday night drive, what better place to take than Mount Panorama, with the absolute panorama view, as we have Ephraim here. 14 seconds behind, but, you know, still pushing here. And, you know, that's of course always the thing. If you don't fight, you could just give up, but of course, pushing through to finish as well, it's always very admirable, as we look here at the Mazda, a very unusual view in a GT3 Group 3 class, chasing down the big German cruise liner that is the BMW M6. And of course, they're also still quite far down, but I think big respect there too. Oh my goodness, he keeps it together. Wow. But yeah, big respect to the exotic car choice of the Mazda, and of course, probably, with the Bentley, the biggest GT3 car in existence to wrestle around this circuit.
I think
Look-
I think the stewards might have a little look at that as Windy comes in out of fuel to get 65%. Kenneth back down to the inside of John Varro at turn 1. Windy's going to come out right in front of that one, but in comes Mikhail. 7% left in the tank. 30 minutes left to go. If this is aggressive, we'll take a look at the fuel numbers going on through, whether this is a 2 or a 3 that we're looking at. The numbers indicate that Mikhail is converting to a 3-stop strategy unless this fuel tank's going on forever and a day, and it does look that way at this stage here. Still waiting, off and away then, and it's a full tank of fuel. Mikhail is going from now to the end. He's pitted at the earliest available opportunity here, and this is now a case of consistency. Yokodo now will probably be looking at this and going, well, what do I do? Every lap that I stay out then and go on, I lose that advantage on the tyres. But the key is, longer he stays out, less fuel he has to put into the car for one. Secondly, and more crucially, fresher tyres means easier to attack.
Yeah, most definitely. And I think this for Kyokudo is the optimum situation that happened to him. So even when he's struggling, somehow the cards just play out for him perfectly. And it's really, really frightening to actually see what a devil's luck this man actually has.
Well, there's a lot of traffic in front. They'll both be ghosting through as part of things. Windy running wide and into the wall there at the dipper. It's easy to do. You carry too much pace. The time drops away. Another 2 seconds off. And that is the compounding issue of pushing too hard around this place. You're trying to gain back time, and then the mistakes just start slowly creeping in like your own shadow.
Yeah, and like a shadow, it's... well, actually, quite the perfect analogy, you know? You are here in the nice, bright daylight of the evening in Mount Panorama, and then the shadows, you know, they keep stretching. And the lower the sun gets, of course, you know, the vision changes a little bit, and it gets more and more difficult, you know? Because if you have something blinding you, it's, of course, even harder to judge some braking distances and, of course, some distances to other cars as well.
Exactly there. So Kyokudo staying out is going to stay on strategy then and wait this one out as long as possible. John Varro and, of course, Kenneth still having that fight. And I will say that the Atenza does look as big, if not bigger, than the beast of a machine that is the BMW 6 that we've got there, the M6. As there is Ephraim about to be put a lap down by Mikhail there in 3rd position at the moment. And what's crucial is the gap, and it's that red box gap that we're looking at. It's 19.8 seconds at the moment, the difference out on circuit, and that tells you all you need to know right now about what Kyokudo's got to do. By the looks of things on that pit stop, if it comes out to anywhere near close enough between them of a 19-second stop, Kyokudo's going to be in for a fight from now to the end, because Mikhail is not going to want to give up that position, and more importantly than that position, wants to make sure that the pace is going to stay there over the course of this race, Nicholas, like it didn't do 2 weeks ago in Formula vehicles when it came to Spielberg.
Most definitely, and I think especially around Mount Panorama, it's the most difficult of jobs to try and stay close to someone, and especially over these longer distances. You just have to bank out one lap after another, and it's just almost impossible with, you know, these conditions where we have the Porsche in the pit lane, to just constantly push out the same lap times, because this lap, it's not as long as Spa, it's not 7 kilometers, but it's 6.2, but what a hell of 6.2 kilometers it is.
Absolutely. There is the man coming out in 8th, 7th place even out of the pits onto the straight just in front of Mr. Colin trying to go. Kyokudo stays out then for another lap. 9.7 the gap between himself and Windy in 2nd position right now at the moment. We did also see Kenneth running into troubles there coming down the mountain there as we saw the leaders go by. So that battle going on for 11th with John Varro. That one all but over at this stage with there John Varro 6 seconds down the road, and will be allowing through the likes of Windy here up another position here on the mountain straight. So now you start thinking about, okay, firstly, who am I fighting with from now to the end? It looks like a lot of drivers will have themselves a bit of a gap here to work with, but the big key is how Mikhail responds, and the key here in terms of this is Mikhail's not responding. The gap's extended out to 20.3 seconds, so there's 2 seconds that have gone just by A, getting the tyres up to temperature, and B, small mistakes on the outlap with a car that is chocker full of fuel.
Yeah, I think it's going to be the very, very fine difference here now, because he has a very heavy car, Kyokudo has a very light car right now. Of course, all the tires, but I think the weight of the car is the main thing at this circuit here. Because with worn tires, you can still push on the edge, you know, you can still sort of just juggle the car into the corners. We saw them, you know, throw the car sideways into the corners on the very edge. Of course, that kills tires, but I think a light car is definitely what you want to have here, especially in these downhill braking zones, in these uphill acceleration zones. A light car makes a hell of a difference here.
It absolutely does, and I think Kyokudo has played this strategy out absolutely fantastically. You spread it out evenly, you get to that last stint, it all works out. We are well over the halfway distance. We are 23 minutes and 42 seconds away at this stage from finding the end of this event, and Kyokudo can pit on Kyokudo time at this stage. It looks like for a driver who has such a great affinity with that side of the world, has spent a fair bit of time in Japan, will be wanting a lot more out of this one here when it comes to the land down under that is Australia. Kyokudo is going to be running that tank, you would feel, to dry, and remember, had 20% more of the tank to work with over the course of that stop. Knew that Mikhail underfilled or didn't even fill that car looking for track position, so now it becomes a case of, well, who's got what? 7 tenths lost in that last lap for Mikhail, the gap up to 21 seconds. I think Kyokudo's got a very, very comfortable margin right now.
Yeah, maybe he's also looking to just fuel save a little bit in his position right now, because I think from the back markers you still get a bit of slipstream even if they're ghosted. And of course, with the ghosting, you have only positive effects then from back markers, because you can't collide with them, they can't hold you up, but of course you can get slipstream from them in that case. And so just get a little bit lucky, get them on a bit of straight, or one of these faster corners here in the middle of the mountain. You don't have to watch out for them, and you can just keep pushing, as we have Almec in our little Jag into the pit lane with 10% fuel left. Gets overtaken by Carl Matthew, who's staying out for another lap, but this nice little Jag with the lovely dog on the side, looking for the last pit stop for sure, stays long, puts a lot of fuel in the car, because there's a lot of fuel to be put in the car, and I think, yeah, 88%, that is quite a lot, so that Jag seems to be quite thirsty.
Quite thirsty, and has 3 seconds of penalty to slow immediately coming out of the pit, so that won't be doing many favours. Back up to speed again and going. That will bring Carl Matthew back into this race here in terms of the fight for 5th and 6th place. There is Kyokudo staying out again here in terms of this one. He's going to milk it for all that he can at the stage. A double take, though, into the final corner. That won't be quite what's needed here, but that gap has started to just equalise. Windy's going to bite the bullet and dive down in, but crucially, down 10 seconds at the moment, has the fuel advantage. So this will be, you would feel, a quicker stop, but used all of the tank there to try and get that one back down to just 4% of the tank. Now that's really concerning in terms of the strategy on how this race is going. I reckon the damage has done something to the fuel tank there, the fact that so much time has been lost, and Kyokudo has been a wizard in terms of trying to save all that fuel.
Yeah, and even if it didn't work out on full normal pace, he really is the strategist of racing, you know? He really manages his races that they just somehow work out. Windy, of course, you know, he had to pit, because at some point you just have to pit. When it's not like you have an extra electric battery here to keep your car running, like, for example, LMP1 cars. But, yeah, Windy just had no other choice. I think he's aiming to get back at Mikhail, maybe. But Kyokudo, in the meantime, just unimpeded, just constantly pulling away at the front. He will have to head to the pit lane sooner or later, but 21 seconds, that's quite a gap that he has.
There's a little bit of a tap there with the wall ever so slightly there from Kyokudo, so he's starting to take maybe a couple liberties as Mika very nearly does the same thing, almost has his own little moment with the wall. You can see how much that's costed there. The gap back to 21 seconds once more as they think about how this one all plays out down the hill once more. There is Kyle Matthew in 5th position at the moment, 37 seconds back of Shalinu, but crucially the gap is only 14 seconds between himself and Al Mike, so that's going to mean that the gap is surely Al Mike's. Kyokudo has to come in. He's probably got nothing left in the tank. He's been a fuel whisperer. There you can see 1% of the tank remaining. He's been whispering fuel to the car every single time to try and make sure that he gets it all around. He gets himself up on the jacks. The tyres will come on. The fuel will go into the vehicle, and he'll just wait for that cue to say, I can go back out and racing once again. There is Mikael heading through the final corner and on towards turn number 1 once more here. And this is where it's going to be close. 63% of the tank. Kyokudo's already out and away. And look at that gap. It's 5 seconds to play with, 6 seconds to play with right now. Mikael, of course, pitting in that early second stop really has not helped proceedings. Mikael has got to try and chase down on the already worn in and cured in rubber.
Yeah, maybe for the first couple laps though, Kyokudo will have to wear these actually in, because completely brand new tires, of course, they're not peak grip from the get-go. You have to get them on temperature, you have to start wearing off that main film of rubber, and of course, in that time, Mikael have to optimize everything. And meanwhile, right behind Mikael, we have Windy, of course, who's also steadily closing down the gap, and the big question here is now, is Mikael able to close this gap to Kyokudo in the moments when it matters?
In comes Carl Matthew as well from 5th place on the road. So this is another little stop. The BP Aston Martin there coming down in. They'll get tyres. They'll put a bit of fuel in the car and they'll send it off on its merry way once again. Through will go Al Mike there in the Jaguar there, making sure that 5th place is all nicely wrapped up with a nice neat bow. There is Daman as well in 7th place, but I think a little bit too far back there. Off and away goes Carl Matthew just like that. And is not a million miles away from Al Mike, actually. It's 9/10 of a second. We've got a battle for 5th from now to the end of this one, and they'll start thinking about it. Gap at the front remains 5.3 between Kyokudo and Mikael at the moment. What was crucial was that in practice and qualifying, Kyokudo was quicker than Mikael, so it may be on raw pace that Kyokudo's got what he wants. He's got a gap, but he has to maintain it between now and the end, and that's going to be the big worry. Any small mistake.
And we saw how much one small mistake can cost, because, as we remember back, Windy, as he was chasing down, he did that little spin, and that cost him dearly. I think it was 7 or 8 seconds that it actually cost him, and of course the resulting pace loss from the front damage that we still see there with these scrapes. Now 4 seconds behind P2. Meanwhile, we have Al Mike and Carl Matthew with the 2 different British cars here, the Jaguar F-Type versus the Aston Martin V12 Vantage, right behind each other. Only 6/10, and that's very deep into Forest Elbow. And Kyle will say thank you to that. That's extra slipstream for him, a free helping. And let's see how Al Mike wants to defend this.
Well, this is the key. Which way do you go? He's going to try and defend the inside of the corner, but not here for the next right. They head to the fastest corner in Australian sim racing here at the Chase. And just enough. Carl Matthew, I think, is better on the brakes. But has he got it all slowed up? Just about puts a couple tyres in the grass and gets it all nicely packaged up. There is Carl Matthew into 5th place, being given the goldenest of gooses to have an opportunity against Al Mike, and you can't really argue against it. Carl Matthew up then into 5th place, but the gap is extending, and I'm wondering here as they actually start exchanging a little bit more for 5th and 6th, how it all works out for it. Kyokudo is 6 seconds clear now here of Mikael in 2nd, but keep an eye on that gap for Windy, because it's 3.7 seconds. 2nd and 3rd, I don't think, is completely done on the horizon.
Yeah, I don't think they're done for their fight in between them, because Windy is starting to catch once more a little bit. Cellino is carrying on with his lovely Wednesday night drive across the landscape here. And meanwhile, of course, we have Kenneth here as well, who has Ilwindi right behind him after all the pit stops worked themselves out. So the Atenza now trying to defend his 10th place, the last place in the top 10 from Ilwindi in the AMR V12.
And, well, this is going to be a key little battle then for the final spot inside of the top 10. Those two will be working hard for it. Kyokudo still using all of the road, trying to build as much of a gap as possible. You have to say, he is the only driver through strategy or through on-track action who hasn't put a foot wrong inside of that top 3, and that counts for so much. They're on their 23rd lap of this event. They've been working incredibly hard to make sure that they get themselves there exactly where they need to in terms of this one. But look at that gap. It's come down to just 3 seconds and even more, down to 2.8 at this stage here. Mikael is really struggling at this stage. Remember, he's on those old tyres right now, and he'll be starting to hit that level where he's really not going to be liking them.
Yeah, most definitely. The older the tyres get here, I said, you know, a lighter car is more of advantage here, but there was a big slide into the dipper there. Just at the exit of the S's. Sorry, completely interrupted myself there. But yeah, the tires, of course, aren't completely unimportant either. You want that grip for when you're driving on the edge, just as we saw there from Windy. And Mikael now making his way past the backmarker Dominku in the Toyota. And one thing has to be said, quickly off topic of the top 3 battle here, Dominku, with his heavy crash earlier, recovered to a very nice and comfortable 9th place.
Can't argue with that. That's a really great drive so far from Dominku. A little bit too far back from Mr. Collin to really make anything happen. And very, very soon, there will be Windy to try and capitalise and jump on in. The gap down now to just 2 seconds here at the moment as Mikael just drifts further and further away from Kyokudo. Windy matching times, but 10 seconds the margin. With the 8 seconds lost on that initial incident, another 2 seconds gone on the next one. I wonder if this would have been a showdown for the race win. If Windy had been able to keep it on the island, I think we could have been in for a thriller, but we still are here for 2nd and 3rd position with 12.5 minutes left on the clock. Remember, ladies and gentlemen, that when the driver crosses the line and there's still time remaining, they've still got that lap to go around. So we'll keep an eye on the clock for you as they all start to make that progress. But it seems like Mikael here is looking behind more rather than in front.
Yeah, it definitely seems that way. I think he's getting a little bit stressed now, going from the offensive to the defensive. And I think with his tire age, it's the best thing to do right now. I think his best shot is to give up his chances for the win right now, because obviously Kyokudo has way newer tires. And just go, well, I gave it my all. I think 2nd is the best for me right now. And let's do my best to keep Windy behind now. But Windy, of course, he is a man with a lot of pace and quite a few talents. Now just over 1 second, so he will start getting the tail end of that slipstream. And of course, that is not what you want when you're coming down this long way down the hill and going up to almost 280 kilometers an hour in these cars.
And of course, the place you see it gain the most is down the mountain, where it gets the tightest, the twistiest, and most dependent on the tyres having grip. Into the chase. They come along for their 24th revolution of the circuit. The gap now 1 second here, and Windy in the 007 here at the moment is diving down again. Couldn't make it home on the strategy that was there, and that is crucial, because remember here, Windy had to pit incredibly earlier than he thought he did, and maybe that damage is doing something that he didn't want to. 6% of the tank comes in terms of fuel. He comes back out only 4 seconds away, so now he's got to do that work all over again here, but he's given himself more margin to go and play with. 3 seconds only lost in that stop.
Yeah, maybe he thought there, it's getting a bit too close, so either way I would have to get past, then try to fuel save, which would be incredibly difficult, especially when then either attacking or defending the position in case he got through. So I think he just went to make sure that he got that bit of fuel in. He wasn't standing for very long, just a few liters put in there. And of course, if you have this strategy element available, I think just to be safe rather than sorry is a very respectable strategy here.
No, you definitely cannot really fault that. Windy, of course, would have also here, Nicholas, been worrying about that damage on the front, and maybe that damage would have been affecting the fuel numbers here today, and that would have been something to really worry about. There is the case of ghosting for lap down cars that we see right now. Mr. Colin being driven straight through by Mikael at this stage in second place, 10 seconds off of the race lead right now, and knowing that there is nothing more that Mikael can do in this situation. He has just got to drive the car home here in the final 9.5 minutes and a bit less at the moment. There is your race leader, Kyokudo. He doesn't have the fastest lap today here in this race, but right now it is an Aston Paradise. They are 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 at the moment, and Kyokudo going for the splash and dash to the end. Couldn't have enough fuel. Has the margin, of course, 10 seconds, and it looks like a fresh set of boots there as well. Mikael diving in. 3-stop was the call of the day then today for the front three.
And just 10 minutes to go. Was that the right call? I don't know, because I think, yes, Mikael might be... Yeah, I think he's behind Windy now.
Yeah.
So maybe from Windy, just for that last thing... Oh, he's coming right out with him. That's going to be interesting to see.
He's got to stay within that second, though. Windy's going to have that ability to push, but Mikael's got everything available. They all needed a splash and a dash. They couldn't make it home on 2 tanks of fuel. So now you start looking and wondering, okay, who's got what? Who's got what they need? And they're going to be fighting incredibly hard here at the front as they look to try and get things going. It's an 8-minute dash. That's roughly 4 laps or so that they'll be racing as Windy there takes 2 stabs to get through at turn 3 before hitting the cutting at turn 4. A 90-degree left that feels like so much more, and Mikael has got to stay in range.
He has got to stay in range indeed. This is just the last bit of the hill. If he can stay within a second, he can just keep up with him. But of course, through McPhillamy Park now, and then down Skyline, down the hill, the most dreaded part of the circuit, I would argue. So close to the wall, not willing to give up any space. But still, you know, you see this gap slightly extending a little bit, then retracting again. It's this dynamic, really, behavior here. So interesting to see. Both very aggressive on the brakes, and 8/10 now. Not quite in attacking range yet, but nevertheless, still within slipstream range, and that's all that he needs for now. He wants to stay within the range. He has to get a bit of an edge on the straight lines right now. He has to nail these last couple corners, and of course Hell Corner, to constantly get the slipstream back. And here, 7/10, it's not quite a lot of slipstream that he's getting.
No, not at all, and suddenly the gap's up over a second, and Windy's pace is a little bit too much for Mikael at the moment, and that's something really, really crucial in terms of the way this one's been running here. Not able to get enough of what is needed here in the late stages to really mount that challenge, as the pace is just simply too much, it seems, at the moment, from the driver at the moment, you could say, with the golden steering wheel. But unfortunately, at this point, it's silver at this moment here. The gap's down to 9.8, but this is Alain Prost territory with Ayrton Senna, of course, at that famous Monaco Grand Prix where Ayrton Senna had complete control, had 45 seconds worth of race lead, and then threw it in the wall. It's got to be something similar here with Kyokudo if there is to be a change here in this overall race victory. But in 6 minutes, that's almost like we're home. It's almost like you remember the streets that you drive every single day, where you do your local shop, where you do anything like that. I remember these streets. I'm home. I'm almost home. I can get this one home.
Yes, and Kyokudo with 9.8, 9.9, 10 seconds, nice little gap there. You see he's still pushing, but not to the limit that we saw Windy, for example, earlier. So, he has this bit of comfort space, and he knows that, he doesn't have to push that much anymore. It's only 5 minutes left, well, 5.5 minutes, so after this it's gonna be, 3 more laps. So, yeah, and that is Mikael just pushing quite a lot still, merely just edging a bit out of the wall there, adding a bit to his paint job. And, yeah, we see the differences between having a comfortable spot and being on the edge of your seat.
Mikael's pushing too much here at this point, very nearly put it in the wall, coming towards the dip, as there is now Mike taking the splash and dash from now over towards the end. Maybe the tyres are hitting the end of their life at this point, and it'll be one more little go forward. Try and make this one happen, and out and away comfortably in 6th place. No real argument about that. There is Kyokudo rounding the first corner as well, about to put a lap there on here with 3 laps to go here at Mount Panorama Bathurst in what has been a sensational challenge in terms of who has wanted to beat the mountain. And we've been talking about these front 3. They look like they are going to be the main contenders for 2021 and the National Championship. And of course, that National Championship deciding who goes to the Motorsport Games as the Malta representative. Surely any one of these 3 drivers holds the keys in their back pocket to really start staking and making a claim that they have what it takes to be the pride of Malta.
Most definitely, and of course, Kyokudo has been showing very, very strongly in these weeks and these months now, actually, because time just flies by with these casual races, with these challenges, and with the grand finale, of course. But at the same time, we saw today how he can get nervous when he's out of his comfort zone. We saw how much power Windy could put on the road, how much time he could gain on drivers like Windy and Mikael. And of course, Mikael, not to count him out either, when others make mistakes, he is there and he's not afraid to profit from them.
Keep this date in your calendar if you want to see more action from World Pro Racing. September 11th is the one that you need to try and find. August 11th was a week and a day ago, but September 11th, keep that one coming up. There's some more amazing stuff that'll be happening with World Pro Racing. If you haven't already, make sure you like, make sure you share, make sure you subscribe for more amazing content, but not just to us, but to those, of course, at TVM Sport, to those, of course, who have been watching when it comes to motorsport.tv and, of course, esports television, ESTV, all of which have done some amazing work. But we are 2 laps away from the end of this one at this moment in time, and it seems like it's a case of not giving up from Mikael, but not getting closer either. Needs a mistake. And that's the one thing that you cannot ever guarantee in racing, is that the car in front will make a mistake.
Yeah, it's just very, very difficult to force that mistake, and I think almost impossible to force that mistake from 10 seconds away. And it really goes to show just, Kyokudo, even when he's in a tight spot, he still holds the reins in control over that race. And but I would argue that, if it hadn't been for that accident that Windy had at McPhillamy Park, that just those millimeters too much, I think then we would be looking at a quite different battle right now.
Flagman had to be careful. Oh, Windy had to be careful there. Windy very nearly took the flagman's flag there, waving the blue flags, and then very nearly took the whole side of the car off there, brushing against the wall. Not the first time we've seen Windy do that over the course of this racing, as there is 6th place Al Mike there, who looks like he's run into troubles there and going incredibly slow, getting back up to pace now. So I wonder if that was just letting the traffic go, or whether that was something more important than that. No, it wasn't. It was a huge scrape into the wall, and that's the 3rd time we've seen a driver run into that sort of trouble there. So Al Mike getting it back going again and able to keep on the run moving forward. But Nicholas, we are heading up towards the final lap, and it looks like Mikael's back within a second.
Yeah, and I think Mikael is going to be pushing with his last-ditch effort now. I think he did put on new tires in his last pit stop, didn't he? And if that is so, he might just be able to make this last change.
It all relies on this, though, under the Armorall Bridge, heading towards the final corner and their final lap of this race. They are on to lap 30 here in this one. The gap is 9/10 of a second to close down. It will take a minor miracle, but you've got to be in range for Conrad. It's not going to happen here at the mountain here for Mikael. If he wants that second place, he's just got to stay in tow and close that gap down. We know that Windy is brilliant on the mountain, so these straights are vital. There's your race leader, 11.7 clear at the front. Kyokudo Sentai, absolutely flawless today. but was rattled for the first time over the course of races we've seen on World Pro Racing. The gap comes down to half a second now, and look at Mikael. Someone's hit the turbo switch. He knows what he needs as he heads up through the cutting, and he's just got to stay in range, and that's the key here as they go on through. Now heading towards the next rights here of 5 and 6, and now you head yourself through this fantastic Frog Hollow, the metal grate here through this left-hand bend, and now to McPhillamy, and down the hill once more will come the battles that go on. Shalinu, I think, is all but done at this stage. We are on the final lap here, so Shalinu will be finishing this one off in 4th position. There's the timer on the clock. Windy there, trying to find these battles and continue on forward. Those who find the checker, they finish the lap a lap down, but Kyokudo will make that push over towards the line, and we'll soon see that the smile will be his once again. He expected it to be close. He's wiggling already, signaling that he is happy with the way that he's been driving this one. And, well, who can blame it? Into the chase for the final time, and we'll be looking for the final corner, and we'll be saying that victory is most definitely mine. I am still undefeated. I am still unbeaten. You may have pushed me this time, but it can get a little bit closer than maybe I would have liked there. Victory for Kyokudo Sentai. The battle for 2nd and 3rd is very firmly Windy's. Mikael making mistakes on the mountain. The gap extending to 1.8 seconds. And well fought between those two. What could have been for Windy come the end, with that mistake costing 8 seconds. Overall, Mikael in 3rd. Shalini already over the line in 4th. Kyle over the line already in 5th place. You really can't fault the way that this race has been run here, Nicholas. Kyokudo deserved that one by sheer consistency values.
Most definitely. Once again, just absolutely faultless from him. One thing that I would have liked to see, though, just as they came out of Forest Elbow, Windy and Mikael, they were right nose to tail, and for a moment, just a short little moment, Mikael was in front of Windy, so maybe he just missed his brake marker to the chase, you know, the most critical corner to make an attack to. And yeah, in the end, it didn't quite work out to him. Windy was able to hold on to it, but I think in that last lap, his tires were just absolutely gone.
Absolutely, some brilliant racing that has gone on. Kyokudo Sentai picking up the win then. 12.2 seconds the margin come the end. You cannot really argue with that one here today. It was some brilliant action, but it wasn't the faultless victory here. Pole position did get the fastest lap come the end, but some brilliant work that had been done. But that, for the time being, does put an end to the challenges that you have seen over the past 4 weeks. Of course, we've had some brilliant racing action that had been going on through all of the works with the Nissan Challenge, the Lamborghini Challenge, the Formula Challenge, and then the challenge to beat Mount Panorama. But crucially, it was 2 wins to Windy, but when Kyokudo came along here, Nicholas, 2 wins for Kyokudo.
Yeah, most definitely. And it's just always this difficulty. You know, of course, you can take the throne when the king isn't there, but when the king is there, it's a lot more difficult taking the throne. But today, I would say it's definitely fair to say Windy gave it one hell of a shot. I think if it hadn't been for that crash, it would have been so close to the finish, because he had amazing pace today.
Absolutely, and you can't fault him for his pace, but he just needs to iron out a couple mistakes, and that one could all be his overall. We'll be back with action on September the 11th. More details will be coming up in the next few weeks. If you want to sign up, they will be coming up pretty soon over at worldproracing.com, and you can find some amazing things going on. They are casual races on the horizon as well, so please just keep on checking the website. There'll be more things, entries coming up, and there are even a couple of giveaways potentially that will be coming up as well, so you really want to go to worldproracing.com. If you haven't already, you can like, you can share, you can subscribe. We've been saying it all broadcast long, that you can always get social with us, as well as us on Twitter as well, as you have been seeing from George Muscat, who has been working hard as a chief race steward, along with the race director Adrian Fagayo. They are part of the Malta Motorsport Federation, and they are both FIA sanctioned stewards. You've got Nathan and Justin Mifsud, who have been on the cameras here for this one, doing a great job. And of course, Nicholas Hillerbrand71 on Twitter. Myself, Jake_Sperry on Twitter as well. Both of whom have been bringing you the coverage for this one today. But it is Kyokudo who will be the happiest, who will be taking momentum once again. You cannot dispute the fact that when it comes to Gran Turismo Sport, he is top dog. He is a head and shoulders above the rest, but was rattled, was forced to battle more than he has done at any other race that we had seen so far. Is 2021 starting to see that pendulum swing looking the other way here towards the likes of Windy, the likes of Mikhail? This could be something very interesting heading into the back end of this year and the start of the next. And the only place you can find it is with World Pro Racing. Thank you for watching on YouTube, on Facebook Live, on Twitch, on motorsport.tv, on TVM Sport, and of course on ESTV as well. We thank you all for watching, and until next time, we'll see you for some more amazing sim racing. This event is brought to you by World Pro Racing, the Malta Motorsport Federation, GMR Entertainment, WJ England & Son, Melita, Media Looks, Restream.io, Gaming Malta, VisitMalta.com, and TVM Sport.
Senna was a god. No one could even dream to follow him.
I'm from a very humble background.
The role of women at that time were really difficult.
It's just so dangerous. You're risking not only your life, but also my life.
World Pro Racing, where sim racing becomes real.